I'm totally used to coming up here after one song. Totally ready for this. If you're sitting there wondering, why are you up here already? Because I told him I wanted to preach really bad. No, I'm just kidding. Well, today is Baptism Sunday, so we're very excited about that. So if you are disappointed you didn't get to worship enough, we will be worshiping while we get to witness baptisms. We baptize one person on Thursday, 4 people at our 9 o'clock, and then here in this service, we're baptizing 7 people. So we're super excited about that. Been some really moving moments. Well, hey, before I jump in, I just wanted to remind you of one thing. If you call Mosaic home, our biggest outreach of the year is coming up here in a couple of weeks. The July 3rd fireworks are right on the horizon here for us. Biggest thing we do, the downtown is just taken over. 15,000-ish people come downtown, and we get to just open our doors and invite them in. We fill this room with inflatables. We put inflatables outside. We throw our worship leader up on the roof, and he pelts people with candy. And for some reason, they come to church. So this is just kind of what we do. And what we need is volunteers for that. So we got about half of what we're looking to get. And I really wanted you to think about it and pray about it. It's such a cool thing to be a part of, especially if you've never volunteered before. It's such a cool experience to come and be a part of something that's bigger than yourselves. The energy is just off the chain. And here's my hook. Our outreach director, Amanda, told me that your motivation is if you don't sign up today, she might not be able to get the right size t-shirt for you. So pray about it, and then when Jesus says yes, you just go do it, okay? Just go say yes. There's a sign-up sheet right out there by the balloons that look like fireworks. Would love to have you be a part of that. All right, let's jump in. I want to start with a quote that every time I see this quote, it kicks my butt. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I want to really love it, and then I realize it's a little convicting. So here it is. Quit living as if the purpose of life is to arrive safely at death. Quit living as if the purpose of your life is to arrive safely at death. At first, I read that, I'm like, this is awesome. This sounds like something William Wallace should say, right? Or Maximus from Gladiator. It just seems like such a manly, good thing to say. And I lean into it. I'm like, yes, I want that. I don't want to live my life like that. I'm in. But then I read it a little slower, and I have to ask myself, shoot, hold on, though. Am I? Am I living as if the point of my life is to arrive safely at death? Am I tiptoeing through life, making decisions that are going to lead me safely to my death? Because we all understand that's a very silly way to live, right? To arrive safely at the moment of your death, that's silly. I don't want to live like that. So I have a philosophy of life question for you today. I want you to kind of gain some altitude, get to 30,000 foot over your life, and I want to ask you a question. How are you making decisions? Everybody has a framework for that, right? Everybody has an equation in their head where they plug in the circumstances and the events of their life, and they have a way to spit out decisions on the other side. How are you making decisions? What drives you? See, I think a lot of times what happens is, here's the thing. If you're sitting there going, I don't know. What happens then, we kind of default. So if you're not intentional about the way you're making decisions, you will default into asking questions like, well, what's going to bring me the most comfort? What's going to bring me the most enjoyment? What's going to bring me the most safety and security? What's going to bring me the most pleasure? You're asking those questions, and those are the questions that you're putting your decisions through, and that's what's causing you to do what you do. If you're not intentional, you're going to default into that. But I want to ask you a question. Think about the people that you admire the most. The people who are changing the world, leaving an impact in this world. Think about your heroes of the Bible, whoever your favorite character in the Bible is. Think about how they made decisions, what equation they had to make choices in their life. I'm certain that those people did not live as if the point of their life was to arrive safely at death. I'm certain. That's not how they lived. That's not how they made decisions. So the question then now becomes, I was asking you, what is your framework for making decisions? What is that equation? Now I want to ask, well, what should it be? What should it be? How should you be making decisions? If you want to leave an impact in this world, if you want to follow God in this world, how should you make decisions? So we're in a series right now called Warriors Come Out and Play. We're looking at these little micro stories. They're found in two places in the Bible, and the heading is David's Mighty Men. So David has this group of men in his life who fight alongside him, and these stories are just inspiring. Love the way these little stories come alive. I want to be like these guys when I grow up. They are just so cool, and I want to lean into that. And the idea behind this series was kind of wanted to awaken a warrior within you. Whatever part of you that's drawn to living like this, I want to awaken that and have you be drawn into the way these men live. So we're looking, though, today is kind of an interesting one. We're looking at a story that for years I didn't like it when I read it. It didn't make sense to me. The decisions that are made in this story, specifically one of them, really makes me frustrated. And I realized over time, I'd read it for years, and I always just skipped this one. I skipped this part. I thought this is dumb. Well, we won't even include this because why would we talk about this? But I had this realization that I didn't get their equation. I didn't get their framework for how they were making decisions. There was a missing piece, something I didn't understand or didn't see. So what I want to do, I want to walk you through the story. I'll show you why I don't like it, and then I'll show you the thing that kind of made it come alive for me. The story is found in 1 Chronicles 11:15. Once when David was at the rock near the cave of Adullam, the Philistine army was camped in the valley at Rephaim. The three who were among the 30, an elite group among David's fighting men, went down to meet him there. So David has this list of 30 guys who are the warriors that were just standout among all the people that he knew. But this story is about the three that are the top of the 30. So if the 30 are elite, these guys are elite. If the 30 were mighty warriors, these guys are mighty warriors. This is the top of the top of the top. And their three names are Jashobim, Eleazar, and Shema. And I know we have some pregnant ladies in the room right now, so if you're still looking for baby names, listen, no other kid in kindergarten is going to be named Jashobim. You would be the only one. If you're looking for unique, that's the way to go. So these three, this is what this story is about. Next verse, we see what happens here. David was staying in the stronghold at the time, and a Philistine detachment had occupied the town of Bethlehem. So this is a big deal. This kind of sets the stage for what's about to happen. David's kind of in a hideout. He's got a hideout as his headquarters, is in a cave, so you can kind of tell things aren't going super well. Just so you know, if you're hanging out in a cave, your life's probably not going very well. So things are rough right now for David. He's got a lot of warriors, but they're in a hideout. And this told us that Bethlehem is under enemy occupation. And that's a really big deal because Bethlehem's actually pretty deep into Israel. So the Philistines, the enemies, they've made their way pretty deep into Israel. And it's especially important to David because Bethlehem is David's hometown. And you probably know that Bethlehem becomes really historically significant. That's where Jesus was born, in David's hometown. So the Philistines have taken it over. Now, so that's the stage is set here. Philistines are occupying that city. David's in kind of a hideout. But the next verse is where I started to dislike the story a little bit. It takes a bit of a turn. Verse 17. David remarked longingly to his men, "Oh, how I would love some of the good water from the well by the gate in Bethlehem." Okay. So if you have kids, you ever trying to put them to bed at night and they ask for water and you go to the bathroom sink because it's closer and you give them some water and they take the water and they go, "I don't want water from the bathroom sink. I want it from the kitchen sink." You ever have that happen? That's what this sounds like to me. Doesn't it? So what is David doing here? David's like, "I want some good water." It's not like they didn't have water. They had water. There were streams. There was wells. He had ways to get water. But he's sitting here. He kind of just sounds like a whiny child to me in this moment. I never understood this. Now, that's on the surface. If we give David some credit that he's not a child, it's probably a little deeper than that. This is probably an emotional thing. It's probably a nostalgia thing. Does anybody, like my parents, they live kind of out in the country, so to speak. So they have well water. When I go there, I like well water. It's because I grew up with well water. City water tastes like pool water to me. So like there's something nice about going home and drinking the very familiar water. So there's probably some nostalgia here. Also, David could be kind of in the place where he's not really talking about the water. He could just be talking about, like, wouldn't it be nice if Bethlehem wasn't occupied and the circumstances were different that I could go get a drink? Like, it could be one of those kind of things. So it's probably deeper. I want to give him a little bit of credit. But it does sound a little bit whiny. So here's what happens. Now, keep in mind, that's not a command, right? He's just talking. They're just sitting around a campfire talking, and he's like, man, it'd be nice to have a drink from that well. Here's what happens, verse 18. So the three broke through the Philistine lines, drew some water from the well by the gate in Bethlehem, and brought it back to David. What? Have you ever seen Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase? So remember towards the end of the movie where he gets the Jelly of the Month Club and he's super mad about that, so he's making a speech and he's like yelling and cussing and all that stuff, and he's like, just offhand says, like, if somebody's still looking for a Christmas present for me, like bring my boss with a bow on him or something like that. And then Uncle Eddie's like sneaks out and actually goes and does it, right? This has the same vibes to me that just happened. This story, David's like, man, I'd love some water. If you haven't got me a birthday present yet, like some well water from Bethlehem. And they're like, let's go. And they actually go and they do this thing. That's just crazy to me. So you do have to imagine the scene. They're in a cave or by a cave and they're around a campfire at night and David's just talking and David just offhand says that and these three are like, and like do some hand signals and they make their way out and they have a little conversation. And they're like, hey, let's go do that. Now, how do you make that decision? How do you decide to go get this water? Because here's the situation. You need to understand what they just decided. Number one, Bethlehem from where they are is about 12 miles away. 12 miles. I always imagine like they were just over the ridge. They just peek over, there's the well. No, 12 miles. That's like from here to Medina Square. 12 miles. And a round trip, that's 24 miles. That's almost a marathon. Just that by itself. The question is, should we jog 24 miles to get our buddy a drink? The answer should be like, no, that's a terrible idea, right? If you're like, should I run a marathon? The answer is no, you shouldn't. Why would anybody ever? I'm just kidding. You guys are way overachievers if you're doing that. But that's not the only thing. So yeah, it was 12 miles there, 12 miles back. But when they got there, the Philistines were occupying the town. And every scholar I read said that means that if they had like a garrison there, that's at least 30 guys were occupying Bethlehem. So, and there's only 3 of them. So essentially the decision was, should we jog 12 miles, each fight 10 guys to the death, grab some water in our Yeti, and jog 12 miles back? And all 3 of them are like, let's do it. How do you come to that decision? How do you make that decision? It seems dumb. Dude wanted to drink water. David, go drink water out of the stream and shut up, right? Like that, you don't need to do all. You don't need to go risk your life and do all that to get a drink of special water. So what are we missing? You know what I'm saying? This is what I'm saying. You see how I'm reading the story? I'm like, wait a minute. They did that. They said yes to that. If that was presented to me, my framework for making decisions, I would have said no. But they said yes. What am I missing that they have? Well, let's keep going in the story. So they all agree. They do the thing. 12 miles out, fight the Philistine garrison, grab the water 12 miles back. That's crazy. Now, believe it or not, the next thing that happens is actually the thing that makes me like the story the least. We're already kind of in, and if you've noticed, I haven't liked any of it so far, but this is my least favorite part of the story. It's the rest of verse 18. But David refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out as an offering to the Lord. God forbid that I should drink this, he exclaimed. This water is as precious as the blood of these men who risked their lives to bring it to me. So David did not drink it. Are you for real right now? Can you imagine, like, ladies, can you imagine your husband being out in the yard sweating and you're like, hey, I'll go get you a drink. It's like, that's awesome. And you go and you get him ice and water and you hand him the drink and he's like, hey, because of your sacrifice to walk to the kitchen, I won't drink it. Like, can you imagine? Like, you get smacked for that. Like, what are you talking about, David? Like, we did all that to give this, it is precious. It does matter. Why would you pour it out? Can you see why I'm not? And that's the whole story. It's over. That's it. You're like, there's no more? Nope, that's it. So can you tell why I haven't liked it? I don't like this story. It didn't make any sense. None of this is like logical. None of this is practical. Why would you risk your life? Why would you jog 24 miles to go get a drink of water when there's water there? And then why would you pour that water out when your boys did go risk their lives and do all that to bring that water to you? Why? Why? Now, I've done a ton of like reading and reflecting on this. I wouldn't be preaching it if I hadn't had some realizations. One of the realizations is kind of a surprising one, though. The answer to both questions, why they would choose to run 24 miles and fight a whole garrison to get some water, and why David would pour the water out, the answer to both whys is actually the same. It's the same answer. You ever have like on a test where you're like figure out this math equation and this math equation, and the answer to both math equations is actually the same answer, and they have like a multiple choice? That's kind of what this is. It's actually the same answer. And it's surprising because these two things are not alike, right? One was very brave. One kind of seems like it just makes no sense at all. So you might be sitting there thinking, all right, so it's a multiple choice question. Both answers are the same. Why would they do this? And you're like, oh, I know the answer. Because they're both dumb. That's the answer. And on the surface, I'd be like, I, as a teacher, I might have to accept that answer. Like, if you don't understand it, like, yeah, that fits both. This was dumb, and that's the answer, but that's not it. And here's why I know that's not it. Because the reason this story is in the Bible, this is like David at the end of his life kind of reflecting back on all the people who helped him along the way. Imagine old David like sitting in his bed and he's got a scribe next to him. And the scribe's like, hey, David, tell us some important things. Like, who are the people that have meant the most to you? And he's like, oh, I got to tell you about my mighty men. And he starts writing down all these little stories about his mighty men. And then they get to Jashubim, Eleazar, and Shema. And he's like, all right, well, did those three ever do anything like together? Like, tell us the story about the three. And David's sitting there reflecting on his whole life, all the stuff these guys did. He's like, oh, I got to tell you about the water at Bethlehem. I got to tell you this story. And there's no way David's sitting there thinking like, this is not like a frat party story. Like we're frat boys. Like they can believe this crazy stupid thing they did. They went and got water and they brought it back and I poured it out. No, this is like a deep thing David's telling them. And here's the thing that we need to realize. The moment that was read by anybody back then, this story, they wouldn't have even asked the questions we're asking. They would have immediately gone, oh, yeah, I see it. I see why David's telling the story. We don't get it because here we are thousands of years later and we're not in the same culture. We actually lack some of the things that they valued back then. We don't value them anymore. So there's a missing piece for us. It's kind of lost in translation. The answer, why they would risk their lives, run 24 miles to get a drink of water for David, and why David, when they brought that water back, would pour it out. The answer is just one word. It's the word honor. Honor. The reason for this story is the word honor. The reason these guys ran 24 miles and fought people for water is honor, and the reason David poured it out is honor. The highest good in all four of these guys' life is honor. That's their equation. That's the way they're putting every event, every decision, the filter they're putting it through is honor. Honor. They asked the question, what would be the thing that could honor David the most? How about he didn't even ask for this, but let's go do it to honor David. And when David got the water, David decided that the most honoring thing he could do is pour it out. Honor is what makes this story make sense. And the reason we miss it, can we be real, is because honor is kind of a forgotten virtue for us anymore, isn't it? Our culture doesn't really do honor very well. We're really good at dishonor, right? Jump on any internet at anywhere, right? And we can dishonor all day long. But we're really kind of terrible at honor now. And that's why we don't see it anymore. I'm not 100% sure why we're terrible at it. Maybe it's because we don't even know what it is anymore. So let me give you a definition. Honor means to value or respect or highly esteem, to treat as weighty or valuable. In the Old Testament, the word that gets translated honor literally means to have weight to it, to have weight to it. So every time you read the word honor in the Bible, that's what it means, to value, respect, to highly esteem. But even that, I don't know, does that help? It's still a little abstract. So sometimes for me, when I read a definition, sometimes it's helpful to have the definition of the opposite word as well. So dishonor. To dishonor in the Bible meant to treat as common or ordinary. And that's interesting. Because dishonor today means to like diss somebody, right? To push them down. But all it meant back then is just treat it like it's normal. And that's fascinating. That honoring was really special. If you just treated somebody normal, that wasn't necessarily honor. That's technically dishonor if you just treat them like they're normal. So that, this would be like the difference between a baseball and a baseball signed by Babe Ruth. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a whole movie about that. I don't know if you guys ever watched that before. It's called Sandlot. It's great. You would not go to all that trouble to get a regular baseball, but one signed by Babe Ruth, you're going to treat it different. You should treat it different. The whole movie is about this idea that one should have been honored and one should have been just played with. And it's different because of one needs honor and one doesn't. It would also be the same as like, hey, you don't treat all people the same. You're going to treat your wife or your husband different than you treat all people because you want to honor them. They're not treated as ordinary or common. So the mighty men in this story are men of honor. Every decision they made, they asked the question, what would honor our king and what would honor our God? Why would we risk our lives to go get David a drink of water? Because we wanted to honor him. We actually thought, they think you're stupid for asking because they're like, well, of course we would do that. It's the highest honor we could give him. He didn't even ask to do it. We had to risk our lives. We had to run really far away. That's the most honoring thing we could think of. Of course we would do that. What are you talking about? And that makes sense. But you might be sitting here going, okay, but still the pouring out thing, that still doesn't fully, like how is David pouring this water out about honor? And this is what actually sent me over the edge in this story. I made a connection between this story and another story in the Bible, and it's the only reason I like this story now. So the story that I'm making the connection with is actually in Jesus' life. Do you remember, there's so many stories about Jesus. Do you remember the one where Jesus gets invited over to a guy's house for dinner, and a woman kind of like interrupts the dinner, and she has this really expensive bottle of perfume. Do you remember that story? And the perfume is in a bottle that she actually has to break it. She has to break it to open it. She can't like screw up the cap back on. She can't use a little bit. She has to break it and pour the whole thing out. And she pours this perfume on Jesus. And do you remember that like that was a very controversial thing in the room? So she does that. Jesus is like accepting this, and everybody in the room is like, that's dumb. That doesn't make any sense. It wasn't just the guys, it was also Jesus' own disciples were like, hold up, what are you doing? This is impractical, this is illogical. You could have sold that and you could have helped the poor. You could have done so many better things with that perfume. They're looking at it going, that makes no sense. And do you remember what Jesus said? Jesus could have very easily been like, you're right, that was dumb. What are you doing, lady? But he doesn't. Jesus says, no, guys, shut up. That's the Adam Barton translation, shut up. And he defends her because she was honoring him. And he even tells them that, hey, wherever the gospel is preached, this is going to be talked about what she just did for me. Which, by the way, that prophecy is being fulfilled even right now as we talk about it. So Jesus defends this, and here's the parallel for me. David takes costly water and pours it out. This woman took costly perfume and poured it out, both for the same reason, to honor God. And Jesus defended the woman. So if Jesus defended the woman, I think Jesus would also look at me and go, hey, shut up. David did that to honor me. That actually matters. So and if you understand it, if you can actually see it from this perspective, these three men risked their lives, run all that way to get David a drink of water, and David took that, and he could have accepted it, but instead he's like, no, I'm going to take this honor that you've given me, and I'm going to pass it on, and I'm going to honor God. So instead of disrespecting their sacrifice, David took it and did the most honoring thing he could do. He's like, I'm going to give this to God. And the men, actually, instead of wanting to throat punch David for that, they were like, yes, thank you. Now, what was just a heroic act of honoring their king turned into an act of worship. And it was even deeper because of what David did. Stories about honor. But on the surface, it didn't make sense, right? So now we can look back at it and you can be like, okay, I see the equation now. You plug in honor and now this makes sense. But on the surface, when you read it, at first it doesn't make any sense. And this is what I want you to see in your life. If you're a Christian, and you choose to live your life making decisions that honor God, by the way, you should. I don't know if you know that. You should be. You should be making decisions to honor God. So if you choose to do that in your life, you choose to say, hey, I'm going to live my life, the equation I have, one of the first questions I ask every decision I make is, does this honor God? Which direction honors God? If you do that, if you start to live your life that way, there are going to be people on the outside who don't understand, who maybe don't follow Jesus, who don't get that whole thing you're trying to do. They're going to look at you and go, that's dumb. What are you doing? Why would you do that? Why would you jog 12 miles, fight 30 people, and jog back just for some water? Why would you do that? Why would you pour that water out, David? Why would you go to church every week and sing songs about God? What is this, Christian karaoke? What are you guys doing, right? And some of you are even weirder. You raise your hands. What is that? That's weird. What are you doing? From the outside, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you volunteer? Why would you give up a part of your weekend to go watch 15 3-year-olds? Do they lock the door from the inside or the outside? They don't lock the door at all. Why would you do that? Why would you give money to a church? I can think of so many better things you could do with money. Why would you do that? Why would you get baptized? That's weird. Think about this. If you're not if you're a Christian, we have to remember, people looking at this, you're going to get in the water, go under the water, and come back up, and everybody's going to cheer. That's weird. Don't you have a bathtub at home? What do you even do? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. From the outside looking in, it doesn't make any sense. And that's what I want you to see. If you choose to live your life in a way where you say, I'm going to honor God with my decisions, you're going to have a lot of people that don't get it. Because honor from the outside looking in doesn't make any sense. If you don't get honor, you don't understand decisions made for that. And what I want to tell you, if you're a Christian, is, man, I want you to be okay with that. I want you to lean into making decisions where you ask the question, does this honor God? Which direction honors God the most? And be 100% okay with people looking at you who aren't following Jesus going, what? Why would you do that? And you just need to accept that that's going to be the case when you choose to step out and honor God. Because honoring God, man, you honor God when you obey him. You know that every time you say yes to Jesus, you honor him? Especially on those things that you're I don't get it. Why does he want us to do that? That you even honor him more when you say, I'm going to trust you even though I don't get it. Or the ones that are really hard for you. Those commands in the Bible that you're man, that one's really hard for me. I don't know about everybody else, but that one's difficult for me. If you say yes to Jesus in that honors him. You honor God when you order your calendar around him. When you say no to some things to make room for him. You honor God when you prioritize him with your time and your energy. You honor God when you sacrifice for him. Your equation in your head where you make decisions as a Christian should be, does this honor God? And a lot of people from the outside looking in are going to go, that doesn't make any sense. And I just want to encourage you, make the decision anyways. Because honoring God has inherent value. Inherent value. Like what I'm saying is, if you say, I did that, and the only thing that happened because of that decision is that I honored God, then that's good enough. You don't need another reason. Do you hear what I'm saying? It's not a means to an end. You honored God, but then what? No, that was it. That was all it was. I just wanted to honor God. And that in and of itself is the highest good and the best thing that you can do with your life. You don't need any more than that. And I want to just leave that. I just want to leave that. I want you to say, yes, that makes sense. But I know there's still stuff inside of us ugh. So if you need a little bit more, why would I live my life honoring God? Why would I do that? I want to say, well, shut up. You should just do it. You should just do it. But if you need a little bit more, I want to show you another verse. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 30. This is God speaking, and God says this, I will honor those who honor me, and I will despise those who think lightly of me, which is another way of saying dishonor him. Now this is an intriguing verse because the first part you can be super drawn to, and the second part's actually kind of terrifying. And God's like, hey, if you honor me, I'm going to honor you. If you treat God like everything else, if you treat God as ordinary or common, not going to go well. So what I want you to see here is that what God is saying is if you honor him, he will take responsibility for your honor. That's a pretty spectacular thing. To say that, hey, I'm going to live my life honoring God, and I'm going to put him in charge of my honor. Have you ever felt dishonored by somebody, or disrespected is maybe a word we use more regularly? Where somebody doesn't recognize your value, or somebody doesn't recognize your worth, or somebody treats you as common or ordinary when they shouldn't? What God is saying here is, hey, you honor me, I got you. I'm going to lift you up. You don't have to worry about lifting yourself up. I'm going to be the one that elevates you. I've got that if you do this. I don't know about you, there's nobody else I'd rather be in charge of my honor than God. So this activates something. And this is a funny thing, because one of the ways we think that slows us down with honor is sometimes we think that if we give something away, we'll have less of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's usually the way math works, right? If I give something away, I have less of it. But that's not the way honor works. What God is saying here is if you give honor away, you actually multiply honor, because not only did you give God honor, God's also going to honor you. So honor multiplies. And this works horizontally in your life too. When you honor other people, you don't have less honor, you have more honor. This is God math. God math doesn't make any sense, right? God says that when two people get married, two become one. So 1 + 1 = 1. That's God math. It doesn't make any sense, right? When a little boy brings up his loaves and fish, two pieces of bread, 5 pieces of bread, 2 fish should not equal, thousands of people eating. But that's God math. So honor God doesn't mean you have less honor. It means you have more honor. God seems to work in this. He multiplies these things. Living a life of honor is something you should be drawn to. You should want that. So, if you're a Christian, I want to ask you, the next decision you have to make, the big one, not like where to go to lunch. Casa del Rio, God doesn't care, whatever. God's not caught up in that. But that next decision that's like, I gotta do something here. This is probably gonna alter my life a little bit. I want to ask, how are you going to make it? Are you going to make the decision that brings you the most comfort, the most security, the most pleasure, the most enjoyment? Nothing wrong with those things, by the way. That can be a part of your decision-making process. But the first question you should be asking is, what honors God in this situation? How can I honor God the most with this decision? And then ask those questions. Because you want to be a person of honor. You want to be like Joshua, Beam, Eleazar, and Shema here. That's the kind of person that you want to be, especially when it comes to your relationship with God. You want to be like David. You want to live your life making decisions where somebody from the outside looking in, they're going to go, what are you even doing? But that's the kind of person you want to be. You want to be comfortable with that. To say, no, I'm a person that honors God, and I make those decisions, and I know sometimes it doesn't make sense to you, but I'm good with that. Because that's the kind of person I am. I'm a person of honor. So, if you have never decided to follow Jesus before, if you don't have a relationship with God right now, maybe you got invited here, maybe somebody bribed you to come, maybe you got somebody getting baptized, and you're like, I'm not really a person of faith, but I'll come here for that. If you're sitting here, I just want to say, I always feel like there's something to that. This is my perspective, and it doesn't have to be your perspective. My perspective is you're here for a reason, and it's not the reason you think. That God's up to something. He wanted to move in your life. He wanted you here for a reason. There's something here that God wanted to do. And maybe if you're not a Christian, if you don't have a relationship with God, maybe, can I just suggest you take a minute here and just stop and do some reflecting? Because it's so easy to ignore when you're living life and you're zooming through things. But can we just slow down for a minute? I just want to ask hey, what if you leaned in today and said, hey, I think God's trying to get my attention. Today you could start a relationship with God. Right now, actually. You could pray a very simple prayer. You could open up your heart to him. You could surrender to God today and start a relationship with him. Put your trust, your faith in what Jesus did on the cross. Accept his forgiveness and his salvation. You could start a relationship with God. That would be the most honoring thing you could do. If you're wondering what the next decision is that could honor God, that would be it. If you've never decided to follow Jesus before, that decision is the top. So I want to invite you to make that decision today. Don't leave here until you've done it. But the other thing that's happening here is we got 7 people who are going to get into this water. And they're going to go under and they're going to come back up. And yeah, from the outside, if you're not a Christian, you're like, what in the world are you guys doing? Well, here's what we're doing. Jesus got baptized when he was on earth. And this is one of the things that Jesus told us to do, to believe and then be baptized. Of all the things that Jesus told us to do, this is actually one of the simpler ones. And we're like, really though? It's kind of a big deal. Yeah, but this is like going underwater and coming back up. It's way easier than like love your enemy, right? Like this is actually kind of easy compared to that. So the people that are getting into this water today, they're making a declaration that we all get to witness. They're saying to the world that they follow Jesus. It's kind of like a wedding ring. They're letting the world know, hey, this is what's true on the inside. I want you to know it on the outside, that I follow Jesus. And there's also some really deep symbolism behind that, because they go under the water and come back up just like Jesus died and rose again. And they're declaring that I'm dying to myself and I'm going to live for him. So this is like one of the coolest things we get to witness as Christians. So I always want to coach you through that, church. I always say, hey, like when each person comes out of the water, you're supposed to cheer for that. And I don't mean like cheer like golf clap cheer. This is football cheer, okay? I just want to clarify what kind of cheering we're doing. This is the coolest thing we get to witness. And we want to celebrate that well here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to watch a testimony video of the first person getting baptized. We get to hear a little bit of her story. And then we'll kind of start to get ready, and we'll take our time. Baptizing people, we're going to have each family come up and they get to witness it. So just be in, if you're not a part of somebody getting baptized, we have a little bit of time of worship. We get to celebrate. It's a really, really moving couple of minutes we get to experience together today. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for being patient with us when we don't make decisions that honor you, when we do the way easier things. I pray that you would help us lean into that, Lord. Show us where we're not honoring you. Show us the decisions where we didn't even include that in the equation. Help us to be drawn to being people of honor. Help that next decision to be one that honors you. Lord, I pray for the person who hasn't decided to follow you yet. Lord, the person who hasn't started a relationship with you, I pray that they would do it right now. That they would have a moment here with you. They would pray and invite you into their life, that they would pray and surrender their life to you right here, right now. And this would be the beginning of something. And I pray for every person getting baptized here, Lord, that you would seal this day, that this would be a moment in their life, something that they don't stay the same, Lord. Leverage this into the next yes, into a life that honors you, and be present in this room, Jesus. In your name I pray. Amen.